I saw online where someone mentioned that they were having problems with their gauges spiking every time they'd step on the brakes, or turn the turn signals on, or turn the headlights and taillights on. And the reason that that happens is because there's electricity flowing from the switch, whether it's the turn signal switch or the headlight switch, back through the tailgate or whatever to the taillights. And then there is a bad ground that allows that electricity to flow from the light back through the system and energize the gauge. And so to fix that, what you have to do is look for a bad ground. So you would begin by making sure that your taillights and tailgate are properly grounded. So you'd make sure that you have your taillights each grounded and that your tailgate has a ground strap, and that all of that runs back through your harness and is grounded back at the electrical compartment, which I'll show you in a minute. But what happens is that the electricity flows back into the body and takes the shortest route back to the batteries. And if the gauge sending unit is in the middle, it'll pass through that and cause the gauge in the dashboard to spike. So this is the oil pressure, no, this is the AC shutoff, low oil pressure shutoff for the air conditioning, the original equipment. That's not used anymore. This is the oil pressure sending unit. This is the low oil pressure warning and buzzer light, warning light and buzzer unit, and all of that is grounded through this little strap here on the back of the bulkhead. So in addition to that, I have a wire that runs through back to the electrical compartment. So if you're having feedback problems, one of the things to first look for is the way that's grounded. On the left side of the motor, this is the mechanical water pressure or water temperature gauge. This is the emergency shutoff for a hot engine, and this is the water temperature sending unit. And so those things are all grounded back here too. And if you don't have a good ground strap on your engine, that will cause feedback to go somewhere through here that may cause those things to spike. So it's really important to make sure that you have those things properly grounded and that those grounds are all in good condition. So this is the electric compartment on the side of the bus. Don't let it scare you. I know all the rust looks frightening and intimidating, but it really generally is not a big problem. So this is on this bus on the right side. Some of them it's in the engine compartment, and other buses have them in other places. But anyway, the issue with that grounding thing was that what was happening actually was there was a weak ground in this panel. And everything gets grounded in here on these two little lugs. And those two little lugs have a red wire. You can see this red wire that goes to this grounding bolt. That grounding bolt is actually one of 4 bolts. There's one up here, and there's one up there. Actually, it might be 6. One in the middle, and maybe more than 6. One over here, one over here. Well, you would think that those bolts would do a good job of grounding this plate, which this is what was grounded, this is what this lug was grounded to originally, would do a good job of doing that. But this bus is so old, it's 56 years old now, that these things have gotten so corroded that the grounding properties had eroded because it was so corroded that it wouldn't make a good ground. So what I did was I drilled a hole all the way through the aluminum panel on the back, and I put a spacer in there, and I put a bolt in, and actually I can show you this back here. I think you can see that. And put this bolt in and made a new strap and put the 2 grounding lugs that go to that on this strap, and that actually solved my oil pressure spiking issues. So if you're having that problem, a lot of times, it's not an electrical flow problem, it's a grounding problem. And so that will fix that for you, and hopefully this will help you out. So while we're on the topic of grounds, there's the other side of this, and that's the battery side. And most vehicles, including this one, typically ground the battery to some point on the chassis or the frame of the vehicle. On this one, the two 8D batteries, the main batteries that come in here, have an on and off switch here that cuts off the power from the positive side, but the ground side always remains connected. So this is one of the ground wires that goes to the strap right here and gets grounded to the body of the bus, and then everything else flows through there to this. These look dirty because I have them coated with grease to keep them from getting corroded, but they actually are probably in pretty good shape. I may take them off there just to check them, but I'm not having any problems with this, so I'm not sure. And then in addition to that, underneath the bus, the starter and the engine have a major ground strap that goes to the bulkhead in the back of the bus, and I pull that off every few years and clean it off and coat it with stuff to make sure that it's stays corrosion free as much as possible. And those are the kinds of maintenance things that you have to do on a regular basis to keep things going. You know, when you have electrical problems, sometimes people assume a starter is bad or a battery is bad, or you know, there's a bad component of some sort. One of the first things you should always check on that is your grounds, to make sure that there is a good ground all the way back to the batteries from whatever the item is that you're concerned about. So this is an example of the bulkhead ground I was going to show you. This is the starter that we're looking at. We're on the back side of the motor, the front side actually, toward the front of the bus. And these are a ground strap that's attached to the block right there, and a ground strap that is attached to the starter motor right there. They both come down to this bulkhead bolt right here that is the grounding strap for the starter and for the motor. And so every once in a while you have to take that off and clean it. Looks like it's been a little while since I've cleaned it, but I haven't had any starting problems, so it really seems to be okay. But nonetheless, it's something you should do every once in a while. And then your positive cable, which is this cable here, and it's got, you know, protective devices around it, comes over to this strap, to this pass-through right here, and that just goes from one side basically to the other, and allows the current to go through. This one on the left goes to the electrical compartment on the right side of the bus where we were a few minutes ago, and then one of these goes to the starter, I'm sure, someplace. Yeah, this one on this strap right here goes up to the positive side, on the solenoid side of the starter. And so if you have starting problems and you think you're having a starter issue, you should check all of these things first. It might save you a whole bunch of money. Those things are a couple $100.